Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and joined by Jan Moray, my co-host, and we do Greet the Week. Welcome to all of you being here. We just chat back and forth and look at the problems of life or circumstances, and just kind of look at how we have changed our attitudes, and hopefully we can be an influence to others for changing their attitudes. And Jan came up with our topic for today in looking at coping skills and whether or not, that relieves the stress or if it's more stressful. So Jan, what was your thoughts on looking at coping skills?
Well, talking about changing our attitudes on things, coping skills or what we do to cope is, something that we don't really think about until things are not going well. And when things aren't going well, we realize some of the things that we're doing, and you kind of look and say, why am I doing this? But Dr. Glasser told us that all behavior is purposeful. So it's providing some purpose, whatever it is that we're doing. And there's an example that comes to mind, from my life. Back when I was in my first marriage, it was a very stressful marriage for me, and I found myself back then. This was back in the 1980s, 1990s, late 1980s, early 1990s. When plastic bags first came out in the grocery stores. Used to give us the paper bags. Of course, they're now back to paper bags, but back then they went from the paper bags to the little bitty plastic bags. And, paper bags you could stack very nicely, but plastic bags, not very well. But I found a way to fold them very neatly and put them in a drawer. And I didn't really realize I was doing that. And then after I got my divorce, and this friend of mine was visiting me and saw me, dutifully folding my plastic bag, she looked at me and says, "Jan, what are you doing?" And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that had some kind of a calming effect for me, with my life being very chaotic, and that I didn't know that I was struggling, to keep things going. But for me, just folding the bags like that was a very calming exercise. And so I realized, I don't need this anymore. So I took all the bags out of the drawer and I just wadded them all up and stuffed them back in. So not even realizing that was something that I did, and a lot of people with mental illness, they pick up different mannerisms and habits and things that they do that are that provide some purpose to them. It may look odd and from the person looking from the outside in, but it is providing some purpose. So I guess what I like to challenge you is to think about, what kind of things do you do when you're stressed, and are they helping you? And if they are, just be aware that there are certain things that you do, because they might be a little strange to other people, but that's okay. If it's providing some calm or some purpose for you, you'll keep doing it. But if you're doing something, like you're biting your nails, or you're beating yourself up, or something, maybe you need to find something else to do in its place. So I guess what for bringing the topic up today, that was the kind of thing I thought we would talk about is, what kind of, coping mechanisms, people could use, whether they're good or not so good, and who's to decide whether they're good or not so good. And
So how do you become aware?
well, you just notice what you're doing, and just like, whether you're walking down the street and you find yourself that you're stepping over lines, okay? When you were a kid, and or is it cracks? You step on a crack, you break your mother's back. How many of you had that little thing when you were out in school? Because we used to walk from the school to the church every day, and we'd go through, on sidewalks and stuff, and we'd say that. But then I find myself every once in a while now walking and I'm stepping over cracks instead of stepping on cracks. I go, okay, why, what, some kind of strange behavior that you're doing, and why am I doing this? Or if you find that you, just when you find people kind of looking at you funny, or maybe somebody's questioning why you do something, maybe you can come to your mind as to, oh, well, maybe that is serving a purpose, and maybe that's not as effective as it could be. Maybe there's something else I could do to help me to calm myself down.
So it's lovingly notice rather than
Lovingly notice.
say.
Yes. Not. I like the way you put that. Not
Yeah, well, I mean, if your friend asking you about what were you doing with those plastic bags,
right.
That could have been anger producing.
Yes, very much so.
And so if someone else says, you're skipping all those cracks, and what if you think if you step on one, you'll break your mother's back, and realizing the fact that, our thoughts are just not that powerful.
Right. They're powerful for ourselves, but not for us to do things, evoke harm on other people. So, yeah. And,
right.
Because you can kind of tell when you're doing something and someone's giving you a funny look, or they're asking, like my friend did, ask you, why are you doing that? And the thing is not to become angry, even though you might feel some anger coming up. It's like, oh, I don't know, it must serve some purpose because I'm doing it. That's part of my ritual of doing things. And maybe it is calming for me, but maybe I don't need that anymore. Or maybe there's something that's better for me to try to do.
I'd like to jump in here and thank you for bringing up this coping business. I just realized that Sudoku, once again, is an activity that I believe gives people a feeling of power, of independence, of self-confidence, of making order out of chaos, which exists a lot in today's world. Hard to know where the truth is anymore, but Sudoku is really, it's such a very practical, easy game. And the people that get into it, I think subconsciously at least, part of the reason is that it gives them a feeling of control.
Yeah,
Life no longer, in many ways, we don't have it so much anymore.
No, I can agree with that. I can see that, because I enjoy doing puzzles. I used to do Sudoku. I don't do Sudoku anymore. I found something else I prefer better. Not that but it's for me, it's better. And I get into a ritual in the evenings to calm down from the day, that I will work a few of my puzzles. And that helps to calm me down. And every once in a while, things get kind of busy and I don't get to sleep. I'm kind of running late, and I get to sleep late, and then I haven't done my puzzles, and I go to bed and I can't go to sleep. And then if I give myself about 45 minutes, and if I can't go to sleep, I get up and I take my puzzle book out and I work on it. And so that is a good example. I think there's different things that people could do that's more effective than what they're doing now.
Jan, I missed a word. What kind of puzzle is it?
It's called cross sums. It's also puzzles with numbers, but with cross sums, they look like crossword puzzles, but you're not putting in words. You're doing arithmetic. So that's what I do. So Mona, what do you do to kind of?
Well, I'm a puzzle person too, not only crosswords and jigsaw puzzles, but I like to just think about life and see what kind of a puzzle life is.
Yeah.
And how, matter of fact, even in working puzzles, I just really, as in working jigsaw puzzles, I can get real into it. And, if all of these colors are the same, but they're not the same, and the shapes look the same, but they're not the same, and you really think about it and you really look at it and you become more aware of it, you can begin to see the really itty bitty tiny nuances in color and shape. Yeah. And then begin to apply that to everything in life. As a matter of fact, just recently on a video chat, there was some people and we were all talking and looking at different directions to do things and so forth. And I brought up a couple of things, and the other person says, well, why didn't you tell me about that? And I said, well, the thing of it is, I mean, there was times that, that I thought about not only talking to that person about what they were doing or not doing, but also with my husband and, neighbors and various things like that. But I'm too busy looking at the fact that what I'm seeing in you is what's in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to correct me before I try to correct you. And so I want to put the focus where the focus belongs. That, my stress, my coping skills, and Greet the Week, the whole purpose of Greet the Week and coming up with this was to, if you can color Monday something besides blue, and begin to see it a little bit more joyful. And instead of thank God it's Friday, well, it's Friday and it's another good day, but it's just another day. Instead of putting all of these labels on things, just take it as it is. That I like to look at, don't cope, overcome. That
Right.
whenever, because to me, a coping skill is like learning to just eke it out. It's like to hold your breath until you can get to a place where you can really breathe. But I want to breathe right where I am.
Yeah.
It's like all the protests that have been going on. I don't want somebody stomping on my neck so I can't breathe. So I don't want to cope. I want to overcome it. I want to look at what it is and look at all the nuances that goes with it.
So do you think
Because
learning to cope helps you to overcome, or do you think it's one or the other? You're either trying to cope or you're working towards overcoming.
I think you need to learn if this is a skill that's coping, that's keeping me stuck rather than growing.
Okay.
And that sometimes, although it is good and wonderful, begin to realize that, I'm upset with that person about this personality trait because I'm seeing it in me. And to realize those things and to see where the locus of control is. I can begin to control my thinking. I can begin to control my neatness in folding plastic bags or just sticking them in a drawer. I can, begin to control those kind of things, but I can't control what someone else does. And they can speak to it, but even in speaking to it, it's just to call attention to. And if they're not willing to look at the attention that's being called, to just kind of move on past it.
Yeah. But sometimes we're in situations where we don't really like the situation that we're in, but we're doing it. We know it's for a temporary period of time, and we know it's very stressful, and we can't really overcome. Or maybe we can, but I'm thinking that it's because it's not something that we really can have any effect over. And so we're trying to find a way to cope while we're going through this, hoping that eventually this will be over and we have made it.
Sure, because there are difficult circumstances. There are, and there's difficult ways to handle it. But as we begin to really think about it, what can I do, or what am I doing, and how effective is it or non-effective is it? Mm-hmm. I mean, everything in life is just so full of so many variables. And so let's imagine that there is a 10, 12-story building and we're on the bottom floor. And there's all kinds of, it's packed. There's people there and you can hear car noises and honking, and it's just really getting your senses. Anyway, so you go up to the second or the third floor and you don't hear the car noises. And you don't smell the pollution. You don't see the pollution. And you go on up a little further and eventually you get up and you look on the roof and you can see and that down below there's all kinds of noises going on or protests going on or all this kind of stuff going on. But you have elevated yourself physically to a place that it's not happening. Well, the thing of it is there is all kinds of things there are all kinds of laws going on in the universe all the time. The law of rotation, the law of the sun rising and the sun setting, and we're always subject to them. The law of stress, even. We're always subject to them until we can grow out of it. The laws of the universe are the same in all dimensions. And it depends on how we handle well, I know what I'm trying to say, but it's not flowing.
Okay. So like, let's say we're in a situation where we're having to take care of an elderly parent, and we have to be around them all the time, and it's stressful, and they're becoming angry because they're not able to go out and stuff, but you're doing it because you love your parent and you want to spend the time with them, and so so how do you overcome while you're coping and dealing with the stress of the situation?
Right. And that's an excellent synopsis to come up with, because there was a time that my mother-in-law needed continual care, and my husband and I, we talked together and said, well, it's time for us to step up to bat and just have her come live with us, which she did until she was not able to and had to go to a nursing home eventually, and then passed on. And after a while, I began to realize that this is just something I'm not gifted in, being a caregiver, being a caretaker. And sometimes we need to know that so that we can make other arrangements.
Right.
So that we can ask someone to, come over and relieve us, or take the person on a little trip, take them for the evening or for the night or for a couple of hours or something.
And be able to understand that you don't need to feel guilty because you can't do it. I think a lot of people feel like it's their duty as the child to help the parent, and they aren't I'm not cut out for doing that kind of thing either. I was very fortunate that we were able to have 24-hour help from my parents when they got to that point. But because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but you do feel kind of guilty about it, but that's okay. Go
well, it is. It's having that duty, and it's acknowledging it, but taking care of the duty without drudgery.
Right.
It's that little bitty shift.
Because then you will resent your parents for having to take care of them, because you're not free to do the things that you would rather be doing, and you don't know how long this is going to last, and whether you can make it to the end.
And then you put your creative system into gear, and you begin to think about, and you begin to look at the situation, and you begin to come up with little things. And I know with Ruby, I began to write down what the schedule for the day was, even though it was the same schedule practically every day. And when someone is getting to the point of, and again, whether it is a child that hasn't learned yet, or whether it is someone that's aging and is forgetting what they've learned, or whether it is just another person that doesn't see things the way that you see it, those laws of life are still the same. Just how do we handle them?
Mm-hmm.
Or how do we cope with them in a way that's not eking it out, in a way that's flowing with?
Yeah.
And
so did you find things you could do to get out of the house or to get away from it, to help you through? Yeah.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. I began to, first of all, it was admitting the fact that I've taken on more than
Than you
I
thought
can
it was going to be.
handle for a 24-hour indefinite amount of time. And then also coming up with the little schedule. And then whenever there was still questions, well, what are we going to do this? And what about this? And what about that? I said, well, what about your list? Where is it? What does it say?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stuff. And beginning to just look into your own self, because we have so many ideas. I know one day we was out riding around, and I was running errands, and took her with me, and I went to Walmart, and I asked her to sit up front because she was not easy to walk around and get around and do things like that. And the greeter was, going to keep an eye on her and talk with her. And I went to get something, and I wasn't gone 2 minutes. I mean, not 2 minutes. And with Mona Duncan, please come to the front. And I knew what it was. I knew it was, so okay. But we have the option. We always have the option of getting upset about it and stressed about it or not.
Yeah.
And once we can come to that realization, that locus of control, and that, why can't this person see things differently? Well, they just don't.
They don't. They don't.
And so it's, how can I handle it in a way that is better for everyone? And so, I mean, we just laughed, but you don't leave in a huff. You begin to realize that, there is a value here with this person. And so you go and you have someone to come, and even if you have to hire them, that's okay. Just do it.
Okay.
Because it's worth your sanity in the long run.
Right. And it doesn't diminish the love that you have for your family when you're allowing yourself that space, and to be able to ask for help and admitting that you can't do it yourself. It keeps that relationship intact. Because I know I made more of an effort to stay in touch than I did before, just to let them know I'm here, I still care, I'm still doing things for you. But,
right. And then you do begin to look at how can I be more humane, be more civil.
Yeah.
Do something that I'm seeing as not being civil.
Mm-hmm.
So that there was on Sunday morning, I feel like every Monday I talk about Sunday morning. We watched the Sunday morning, the CBS, I think it's CBS. Anyway, it's the Sunday morning news program. And it was on there, it was talking about all of the demonstrations, and, some got completely out of hand for the, in asking for civil policing and respect for all peoples regardless. And anyway, they showed several cities that protested peacefully, but they were showing one in particular that someone had caught on film, and then they showed it, that there was, the protest as a whole was very peaceful, and that there was this one guy that was caught on someone's cell phone, caught him, and he had a baseball bat, and he was going over, and he was drawing back, ready to damage a building, to just plunder and destroy, and made notice to several of the people around, and they all went over to him and began just speaking to him, and they shook his hand and they hugged him. And I mean, you could just see that anger and that frustration drain away from that person. Just begin to drain away. And sometimes all we need is to touch somebody, just to
no, that is a great story. I think that we need more of that. People need to know about the effect of that, because so many people think that you need to get angry, and you need to, I'm not saying destroy buildings and stuff, but just from people in general, that because people won't listen to you if you don't get to that state. And it's like, well, but anger begets anger. And they've done studies that the more, because they have groups. I know there was a divorce group, where the people would go to this divorce group and they would just talk about how angry they were at their ex-spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse, and all it did was make the people become more agitated. and so you're thinking, you think it sounds like if I can let that anger out, that I would feel better, but the studies are showing that that's not necessarily true. You let the anger out, and the anger spreads, and more people are becoming angry. But the same thing happens with kindness. If we're kind to somebody, kindness, if we're kind to somebody and show that we care about somebody, that spreads as well, and the anger can dissipate, and people can feel better towards each other.
And it's palpable. I mean, as you
Yes.
begin to have, even those angry thoughts, even those, but I mean, they precede us.
Right.
To begin to think those thoughts of that this is a person of infinite worth and value.
Mm-hmm.
We may not be in agreement right now, but that does not diminish who they are. And I don't want to act in a way that diminishes who I am.
Yeah.
Because I know one day we were driving around, and I would take her with me when I had places to go and things to do. And anyway, so and she was talking to me, and we were having a nice conversation. And I made the comment to her. I said, "Oh, Ruby, you just seem so much better." And instant she said, "Well, not really."
Oh.
Yeah. And sometimes, and there was something in me that wanted to jump on that, it really did. But you have to just stop and think. You have to put that pause, that Viktor Frankl, that every choice, there's a pause. And if we take that pause, and in that little small pause, there's power. There's power to make another choice. There's power to lower your voice. There's power to be a little more patient. So anyway, and then in taking that pause, I said, "Well, Ruby, I'm hoping you get better." I said, "It's more pleasant to go out and do things together whenever you're feeling good and doing okay." And then it wasn't long till she was just back in there, chattering again. Although the chatter was somewhat irritating too, but it was better than the non.
I'm really glad that we're talking about anger. I think it's a huge subject, and I wish we'd have another Greet the Week on just that subject, but it's very destructive most of the time, but sometimes anger is justified and is healthy and appropriate. Not always, but occasionally. And I think we need to discern the difference. When is it destructive and when is it constructive?
Well, anger, we're born with anger. It's one of the things we're gifted with. And it's so we'll make noise. It's so we'll speak up. But all too often, it begins to rise, and we're aware of it, but we don't speak up. We don't say anything about it. And it's whenever it gets to that explosive stage that it becomes destructive.
And anger can be a coping mechanism as well. That's what you do when you're feeling like you're not being treated properly. You show your anger, and that tends to make people quiet down or leave the room, leave you alone. And then you learn that is some way you have to respond. And I guess that's a good example of something that you look at it and say, is it really effective? It may seem effective to me because people are leaving me alone at this point, but what am I doing to the people around me?
And I'm being alone until I'm always alone.
Right.
And then you're mad because you can't get along with people. Well, then we have to begin to really look inside. We have to begin to really look at, if this continually happens again and again and again, I think we've found the common denominator.
Right.
It has to be moi.
We may not want to admit that, right?
Right. And so it's getting honest with self. Nothing is going to happen. Our perception is not going to change. Nothing is going to increase until we get honest with ourselves.
Yet, can't we look at anger as the emotion, and then the action would be how we behave, what we do with our anger? You know, and that some people will just swallow it up and some people will say something, and it's then how you say something. How can you be angry but rational?
Yeah.
How can you be angry but respectful? But I mean, that's been something that I've wanted to talk about also, is what do we do? How do you, like, if all behavior is purposeful and if it's all about relationships, and will this help us be closer together or further apart? And we keep asking that. And yet, are there some times where you know, if you see something, say something? And are we all just burying our heads?
We're running out of time here, but I just want to give one example. There was something that I learned in a parenting class that I went to when my kids were little. I was a half-time single mom. I had my kids every other week, and it was just me with the children. And so we created mad hats. And I went to Michael's and bought a bunch of these little caps and some of that stuff that you put on fabric that you squirt on and it decorates them. And so we made our mad hats, because every once in a while, there's times when you're angry and there's nobody else there and you don't want to hurt anybody, but you need to find a way to tell them, enough, I can't take anymore. And so then whenever we got angry, we put the hat on. And everybody knew, okay, mom is angry. and it would calm things down. And it's just amazing the things that you can do to kind of change the atmosphere, you know, the tension.
It is amazing what we can do. And so thanks for everyone for being here today. Please come back again as we look next Monday. And it's a delight having you with us, and we'll close out for now. I have a little poem here. Let me just read it as we close out. I was going to do this for next week, but that's okay. This is appropriate. May I be at peace. May my heart remain open. May I awaken to the light of my own true nature. May I be healed. May I be a source of healing for all beings. May you be at peace. May your heart remain open. May you awaken to the light of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for all beings. May there be peace on earth. May the hearts of all people be open to themselves and to each other. May all people awaken to the light of their own true nature. May all people be blessed and be a blessing to all that is. Blessings. Go in peace.